Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 315 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How's it going this fine Monday, Richard?
It is going very well, Seth. Another year, another Tom Throne of Eldraine Brady Super Bowl win. You just can't stop him. We'll change teams. Oh, fun fact. I had the Goldfish stats team look this up, okay? Tom Brady has more Super Bowl wins than cards on the ban list from Throne of Eldraine. There are 6 Throne of Eldraine cards banned in Standard. Tom Brady has 7. That is the only metric you need to know to see how absurd the power level Tom Brady is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Brady fan because he beat up on the Bills for 20 years or something, but gotta respect him. That is, yeah, I mean, he's obviously the best quarterback of all time. Like, I don't even think that's up for debate anymore. So, yeah, it's super impressive. But we have another co-host, Krim. How do you feel about Tom Brady this week?
I was tired of the same old thing, but you know what? Whatever. You got to respect how good he is. And on top of that, I do wonder, now that you got 7, does he retire? I think he says no.
He has 3 more fingers, Krim. He has 3 more fingers.
He's about to have his second Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he'll be back next year, and I'll probably do it again somehow, even though he's 50 years old or whatever. So I don't know. I don't even know what to say about Tom Brady at this point. But anyway, we're not a football cast for the most part. We're a Magic cast, and we have some interesting topics this week. We're going to talk Kaldheim in Standard and Modern. The set is having a pretty big impact in some very specific ways. So we're going to get into that, talk a little bit about how Magic is doing in general. They had a investors conference call today talking about how 2020 went from Hasbro's perspective. Also, reserve list insanity, prices going through the roof. And then we got a partial Secret Lair announcement this week as well. And of course, at the end, some fish mail questions to answer. So that is the overview of the cast today. But before we get into that, if you ever tried to sell your cards, it's a lot of work. It's super hard. And our show sponsor today is Card Conduit, and they are the perfect sponsor if you're struggling to sell your Magic cards, because they are the easiest way to do it. If you want to avoid all the hassles and all the time it takes to sell your cards, this new service from the folks over at Card Hoarder will sort, grade, and sell your cards for you. And once the shipment is processed, you'll get the proceeds minus their fee. And right now, you can get a 10% discount by going to cardconduit.com/goldfish. So thank you so much to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's kick things off talking a little constructed this week. Kaldheim has been out for a day or two in paper, but it's been out for like a week and a half or something in digital, and we're starting to get deck lists. We're starting to get some not huge tournament results, but we're starting to get a taste of tournaments from like SCG qualifiers and so forth. So what do you guys think about the immediate impact of Kaldheim? Let's start with Standard. What do you think about the immediate impact of Kaldheim in Standard?
Well, Kaldheim has already made an impact, right? It's dropped Goldspan Dragon, so it's doing a lot better than what I initially thought it would do, which is actually add cards into the format that we'll see play. But at the same time, that bar isn't that high because I think it's like how many cards are actually getting played though? Like it's like Goldspan Dragon, maybe like Egon and stuff like that. And then it's like Tibalt's Trickery, people are trying it in Standard, but I feel like it's just not really working all that well in Standard. And then the rest is just like Rogues, and for the most part, still Eldraine. So
Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely say that the Izzet/Grixis Tempo deck, I would consider that a Kaldheim deck. Like, that deck it's really built around Goldspan Dragon. If it wasn't for Goldspan Dragon, I don't think that deck would exist. So I would feel pretty comfortable saying, okay, that's a Kaldheim deck. I think you can also argue that the Red-Black Sacrifice deck, yes, that was a deck that existed before Eldraine, but I think it's really the printing of, like, Tibalt for one thing, also Immerstrom Predator, that has kind of brought that deck back from, I don't know, like I never played against that deck, honestly, before Kaldheim came. Like I knew it existed, but it wasn't something you saw very often. Now it is arguably one of the top tier decks in the format, and we also have a Showdown of the Scalds, I think is a card we definitely missed on our top 10, which is powering a lot of aggro decks right now. Binding the Old Gods is another one that, it's not creating its own decks, but it is improving a lot of different decks and showing up in a lot of different decks. So I think overall, the impact of Kaldheim is more than I expected to. It's definitely still not the best deck in best set in Standard. That's definitely still Eldraine, but I do think that it has made a pretty meaningful impact in, as of right now, 2-ish weeks into the format since it released in digital. I still think Standard is in like a pretty decent place. We haven't gotten to the point yet where one deck has risen to the top and just shown itself to be better than everything else. I've seen some like grumblings and rumblings about the Is It Dragon deck being like the best deck in the format. But if you look at the tournament results this weekend, it still looks pretty diverse for the most part. So yeah, maybe Standard is in a pretty good spot. What do you think about all this, Richard?
So it's diverse, but is it fun? Right? You guys rattled off some Kaldheim cards, but what I've been seeing is just Brazen Borrower and Stonecrusher Giants like up the wazoo here. And I know Crim's gonna love this, but we have a new Teferi in the format in the Dragon. When have you seen like a 5-drop play that leaves 2 mana up to counter your next play, right? Like, I was like, oh my god, this is Teferi all over again. But I think that's not the problem. The problem is it's the same cards, like, again and again, right? Like, I think I've seen, like, a Bone Crusher Giant in, like, 85% of my matches, right? Like, any deck, like, aggro deck, mid-range deck, control deck, it's always there. So, I don't know. And I started off with Adventures this week, and I'm like, this is too slow, right? I don't want to sit here and grind and draw 80 cards and then finish a match after an hour. So I eventually just slimmed my deck all the way down to mono red, and I'm relieving people with 1-drops, and like that's how you get it done, right? Because otherwise the games just go forever. They Yorion, they draw 80 cards, you draw 80 cards. Like I don't know what's going on, and it's just so grindy nowadays. Like nothing ever ends. So yeah, I go 1-drop, 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 Embercleave, and get in there. And the card I see most is the new Lightning Bolt, the
Frostbite?
Frostbite, and Stonecrusher Giant. Oh my god. Every single game, every single match, like everyone is on Is It or some red base deck, and just the same cards over and over again. I feel like I'm still playing Eldraine Standard, right? Just a couple new support cards thrown in.
Yeah. I mean, that is very true. I would agree with that. The Eldraine cards are still the best thing going in the format. Are we at the point where and it pains me to say this because I really like this mechanic, but are we to the point where we have to think of the adventure mechanic is actually being a mistake? Like, just after seeing Bone Crusher and also Lovestruck Beast and also Brazen Borrower and even like Giant Killers among the top 20 played cards in Standard right now, although it's not as devastating as some of the other ones, like, is that whole mechanic just too good?
It might be. I think it might just be, because, or at least for when you think of like what Standard is, I can speak to that. I think it would be like a little too powerful there. At first, it didn't seem like much because it's just, a shock, whatever, and a giant, okay. But what it actually is every card is now 2 cards. You can't duress the thing. Like it's kind of miserable, actually. It's too much value.
It's a 2-for-1 because it's 2 things, but the creature is actually really competitive, right? Like a 3-mana 4/3 where you get shocked for targeting it is actually like a pretty good card, right? And you get a free 2-mana shock on top of it. Same with Lovestruck Beast. A 3-mana 5/5 is pretty respectable. And then, you get the extra creature. So I don't know. There's just too much value. Like every card is a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 in Standard now. Like if you play a card that 1-for-1s, you're doing it wrong. So I think that's the problem. And that just leads to games that go on forever. And then basically any adventure card is a must consider because it's just a straight 2-for-1 at like, very competitive rates. So yeah, like, I don't know. Like I don't think it's overpowered or anything, but it's just, it causes the power level to rise, and then you can't play any other cards, right? Because all these cards just have 2-for-1s built in.
I think that's a really good way of putting it, because if you look at especially Bone Crusher and Lovestruck Beast and Brazen Borrower, you can make an argument that without the adventure mode, those creatures are at least very close to just being playable. Like, even if Lovestruck Beast couldn't make the 1/1, I think that's still a card that would see play in Standard. And Bone Crusher Giant is relatively close to that as well. So I think that maybe they just should have like toned down the creature half a little bit. Like, a lot of times when you have these value mechanics, Wizards kind of ups the cost a little bit. Like, we can see that with Foretell very clearly, I think, in Kaldheim, where a lot of the Foretell cards, if you're not foretelling them, they're a little bit more expensive than they would normally be. Maybe half a mana more, somewhere in that range. But there isn't really much of a tax for the adventure cards. Like, the creature halves are pretty fairly costed, and then you just have the upside. And they also tend to curve really well. I think part of what makes Bone Crusher so good is like, 2 mana, you kill their thing, 3 mana, you play the Bone Crusher, and that just like makes sure that your curve is going to be good every single game by having this one card in hand. Kind of the same if you have Brazen Borrower, turn 2 bounce, turn 3, you play the creature, Lovestruck Beast, turn 1 into turn 3. So it kind of like fills out your curve all by itself, which is a really powerful ability. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. The other Standard question I had for you before we talk about Modern and Kaldheim Carnage in Modern, what do you think about the Trickery deck? I think that's still been a hotly debated topic, and we should say right off the bat, Tibalt's Trickery is not winning tournaments. It is not, I have not seen a single list show up in the top 8 results of any of the tournaments posted this weekend. Maybe I missed it, but I'm pretty sure it's not winning anything. But the reports I've heard from people is like, I'm winning about 50% of the time with the deck. Is Tibalt's Trickery winning 50% of the time something we should be concerned about in Standard?
Is best of 1 or best of 3? I think there are 2 different answers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's start with best of 1, because even though I don't think we play that primarily, apparently that is the most popular format on Magic Arena for the game in general. So what about in best of 1?
I as someone who plays a lot of best of 1, including historic best of 1, I don't think it needs to be banned. I just don't see the I feel like most of the time I am getting a very small sample size. Every time I see it get played, it's like they flip and then they mill and then they get a free spell or they hit their other Tibalt's Trickery. It fizzles too easily, especially in historic where it just gets thought seized and then it loses. So I don't know. I get it. The play pattern's kind of absurd. You just mulligan down to 2 or 3, and then you just kind of like, all right, well, go for it, concede, go to the next game. So the play pattern is a little problematic, but I don't think on a power level point that it's too powerful.
How often do you play against it? Because I don't play best of 1, period, really. So is it something you're running into 10% of the time, 50% of the time, 1% of the time?
I would say like a good amount. I think I might be over exaggerating how often I'm playing it here, but it feels like it's like 1 in 4 matches.
Okay, so it's probably one of the most heavily played decks in best of 1, you would say.
Right, it's definitely one of them, but the funny thing here is like it's also one of the ones that loses the most every time I played against it. So, like, it's so weird how many times I can just sit there and just kind of see what happens. All right, your turn, and then like they just fizzle.
What do you think, Richard?
So I haven't played the deck, period. And I played a ton of best of 3. I haven't played best of 1, but I played a lot of best of 3. Haven't actually run into the deck at all. So I don't know. I don't know how, but it feels like it shouldn't be a thing, right? Like, even if it's balanced, even if it has a low win rate, the fact that there's no interaction, the fact that you're just sitting down, one person plays solitaire and determines the outcome of the game, feels
not
weird.
Even solitaire. It's like the slot. It's the slot machines. We've already like I was streaming and we figured out it's the slot machine.
But at the same time, it's so cool though, right? Imagine you're a new player, right? And then someone Tibalt's Trickery you. You're like, wow, that's so cool. Like, what is this 2-card combo? So in that sense, I actually think it's refreshing that it's not just mid-range value fest. But I don't know. Like, as best of 1, you don't really have recourse. You're just playing slot machines at that point. But Power level wise, it seems fine, but I'm not sure about the experience. Though I kind of like having a combo deck in standard, even if it's a bad one. Like just so new players understand that there's this other aspect of Magic.
Yeah, I think for me, I actually like decks like the Trickery deck. I mean, I love Zombie Hunt, and there's a lot of similarities in how those decks play out. I think the Trickery decks are like better Zombie Hunt because they're more likely to win the game when they work. But I like decks like that. But I also like those decks to be very fringe. Like if I had to play against Zombie Hunt 25% of the time, I would literally go insane. Like that would not be enjoyable for me at all. So my hope is that maybe like after this initial rush, it just becomes less and less played. And if it's a fringe like tier 3.5 thing that you can like break out, you know, for a few matches for, you know, the fun of it, like I'm on board with that. Like I don't mind that. But I do think if that play pattern is something that's among the most played decks in the format, like that's not something that I'm really interested in doing all the time. In best of 3, I've played against it twice, I think, out of a big sample of matches. So in best of 3, it's not really a thing. But best of 1, I do have a little bit of a concern there if it does remain one of the more played decks in the meta, because it's a coin flip. It really is just like a coin flip. It's like there was a button on Arena that was like, flip the coin, you win or lose. And I think people would use that button to try to hit their daily rewards. So there is an incentive to play that deck in best of 1, I think.
I mean, isn't that called winning the coin flip, right? Isn't that the best of 1 coin flip there? You're like, did you go first? Okay, you're going to win, right? But I think the quest part might actually be part of it, right? People just need to hammer out their wins to get their coins. So they're like, yeah, we'll just Tibalt's Trickery a couple of times and then call it a day. So I wonder how it'll settle after a while where A, it's not the cool thing anymore. Like you're just trying it out because you're like, what is this deck? And then B, people are like, it doesn't win that much. Do I really want to just sit here and coin flip, or should I actually play some Magic to finish my quests?
I think the other day, on the stream, I played that deck for like 6 out of the 8 hours. It was just 6 hours of me just like imagining your grandparents sitting at the slot machines and having the time of my life. It was really fun. I lost a lot. I think I went all around, I think maybe like 30 to like 40% win rate.
I think that's fine. If it's that win percentage, it's probably going to be okay.
Yeah, like that's what makes, and once again, this is just my sample size. Of course, now for the listeners at home, don't think of it as like the time. Don't remember it for the times you lose. Remember it for the times that it often does not do anything, right? Like you got to remember that. Yeah, sure. When you lose, it looks bad, right? Also, people have a tendency to concede very early. Like that's another thing. You can definitely beat it. I know this sounds like a meme, but there are bad hits. Bad hits are like an Ugin, right? Like, because an early Ugin, though powerful, if you're low to the ground, like let's say if you're a Richard and you're running around with a bunch of, like, you know, your red deck. Okay, that feels kind of bad because how do you beat an Ugin? But any other deck can just like kill the Ugin. Like with a hard removal, like a Blood Chief's Ascension, Binding of the Old God, something along those lines, and then just call it a day, right? Because they don't do anything afterwards.
Yeah, I also think that some cards go way up in value if you're playing against that deck a lot. Like, I have found Brazen Borrower to be very effective because you don't actually even have to, like, kill the Ugin or the Coma or whatever. Like, if you can just bounce it, it's going to take them 5-10 turns to do anything again. So you basically can just win with one card. So maybe people can just adjust to it. But at the same time, like, if your goal is just like, how can I win X matches as quickly as possible? Even if you're winning 30% of the time, that's probably the way to do it, especially with how grindy a lot of other decks are in Standard. You can probably get in 10 matches and win 3 of them with that deck in the same amount of time you'd get in one match with like a Yarion deck or something.
It's true. But I mean, like, if you're looking to climb with it, I think I was dwelling at the bottom of Diamond. I just could not.
No.
Like, I got close to getting to like Diamond 3, and then I just went right back to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Unlike some other formats we're going to talk about, if you just play normal Magic, you're still probably fine, right? Like, if you're playing Standard, you probably have Brazen Borrower, you probably have actual removal. So, like Krim said, if you just don't scoop, and then you actually just like interact with it, 30% of the time they'll die to themselves. The other 30% of the time you'll take care of the problem yourself, and like it's good. So I actually think it's fine given how standard is and things like that. We can interact with it perfectly fine. So I don't know. It doesn't seem that bad. It's not like it's Dredge where you're like, do you need to run main deck graveyard hate? It's like, no, right? Just Brazen Borrower. You're good.
Yeah, like it's not even like a tall ask, like like a big ask of your deck, right? It's like Brazen Borrower is just good anyways, and you're probably already playing that. So I mean, yeah, like I think the deck is just a bigger meme. It's just like you can't win when they hit an ultimatum, but like that's okay. Ultimatum's like game over. But if ultimatum's that big a deal, then maybe if you're a blue deck, you start playing Mystical Dispute. Because that deck can't beat a counterspell.
The good old
like,
one mana counter your 7-drop play. Yep.
Also,
it's
miscast, I think, is another interesting answer. Because that is only always 1 mana, and that's always enough to counter on turn 1, whether you play draw. So it's pretty narrow, only hitting instants and sorceries. So maybe if you play against some creature beatdown deck, you're going to get super punished. But if you are interested in just answering Trickery, that is another way to get it done. However, let's move on to Modern and talk about what is actually probably the real broken thing to come out of Kaldheim. Like last week, all the hype was about Tibalt's Trickery. Well, it turns out that maybe Tibalt itself is the actual broken card to come out of Kaldheim.
I would have put this on Tibalt. I would have put this on Tibalt.
So two cards Tibalt related.
So yeah, I know it's Tibalt's time to shine, Krim. You've been waiting.
This is once again the monkey's paw curling. I want Tibalt to be amazing and dominate standard, or all formats, and now it's pretty good, right? Like, I mean, this new Tibalt, like, cascading into it.
Yeah, so we had a Modern challenge this weekend, and coming in as the 7th most played card behind like the Lightning Bolts and Force Negations of the world is Valky, God of Lies, probably better known as Tibalt, followed by some Cascade spells. And I believe in this tournament, top 8, there were 3 Cascade into Tibalt decks, and I think it's 7 overall out of the top 32. So we're actually talking about one of the most popular and arguably best things to do in Modern right now is just try to turbo out a Tibalt as quickly as possible with a Cascade spell. Richard, I know you messaged me a couple days ago and you're like, oh my god, Modern, I'm done with this. What has your experience been with this sweet new synergy?
Like the idiot I am, I marched Tarmogoyf from his grave into 4 Modern leagues. Okay, let me tell you what my sideboard looks like, folks. 4 surgical extractions, 4 lost legacies. Okay? Because they have introduced a 1-card combo into Modern called Cascade. Right? So there are many things you can do. You can Cascade into Tibalt. So if you're playing, let's say, a dirtily mid-range deck. Let's say you're playing an Uro deck. You don't have to play 2 drops, right? You just play Tibalt and you Cascade right into them. And you have a 7-drop on turn 3. You can do other smart things like Cascade into a Trickery, which then grabs you an Emrakul, and you get a 15/15, and since you actually cast it, you get a free turn right there. So you end the game on the spot. So there's nothing you can do. You Thoughtseize all the stuff away. They just draw a Cascade card, and the game is over, assuming you resolve the Thoughtseize, because, of course, Veil of Summer is still a card, so they can just draw a card off you for fun. So, my god, Modern is just...
Do you remember when Modern you only died on turn 3? Or
you know what? I'm thinking like I wish you played a card. Those were the days of fair magic, right? Now you don't even need to assemble your Tron lands, right? You just play your 3-drop Tibalt, right? With 1 card. You don't even need to like fetch your library, Sylvan Scrying. Forget this, right? You just Cascade into Tibalt or you Cascade into an Emrakul and call it a day. So yeah, Modern is like that. I was gonna go play Green White Hate Bears to like play the you can only cast 1 spell a turn hate, but I just gave up with
Magistrate.
The Aethersworn Canonist, those kind of spells, right? But I ended up with Lost Legacy as my answer. You Thoughtseize them. you lost Legacy and let Tarmogoyf kind of limp him there and like finish it off.
I think there's two issues that you had there, Richard. The fact that, yeah, like this is pretty powerful, and two, that you sleeved up Tarmogoyf. It's not, I think it's a mixture of two things here. And if you're not playing Ren in 6, that means you're playing Strangleroot Geist, if I recall.
No, you know what? So I was playing a normal Jundless, and like 3 leagues in, I'm like, this isn't cutting it. I've been to Fairy too many times. It's time to break out the secret deck. Strangleroot Geist. I was like, I hope I pair up against Crim randomly in the modern.
Cool, so maybe you beat me, but how do you beat?
I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I playing Strangleroot Geist in modern?
Did it feel bad? Because it should.
I'm like, 4 surgicals, 4 lost dreams or whatever, 4 Strangleroot Geist. Like, what is this deck? I give up.
That does not sound modern ready. But second off, then you're trying to pair it like with turn 2 Tibalts and all this other stuff. Like, for the listeners at home, this is what a sample deck list is right now. 3 Valkies, 4 Simian Spirit Guides, 4 Uros, some amount of Omnath Locus of Creation, Teferi Time Raveler to blank the opposing Cascade, Violent Outburst, Force Negations, whatever else. Christmas Land the rest of the way there. But that's what deck lists are looking now, and like everything's like 5 colors in modern because, you know, mana's not that big an issue. Like, what are you gonna do? Punish them by like playing Blood Moon? Way too slow. Like, oh boy.
It's the new thing. It's called combo mid-range deck. If you somehow stuff their combo, that 1 Uro will take them the whole distance, right? Like, you don't need to do anything, right? They're like, oh, cool, Uro you're dead.
So they can play the fair game. It's called literally just Uro. Or Omnath will just grind so much value that you eventually die.
So I played both of those decks in the past week in Modern, the Cascade into Trickery and the Cascade into Valky. And I will say, I didn't find Cascade into Trickery to actually be very good. I really felt like it was mostly matchup roulette, where if you run into some poor soul who's just trying to like play their random white creatures or whatever, oh my god, there's no way they're or they're Strangleroot Geist, I guess, would be on that list. Then there's no way you can lose. On the other hand, if they just have a Thought Seize or a Force Negation, it feels like there's almost no way you can win.
You haven't played it enough, Seth, because you get your first Cascade spell countered. Unless they combo kill you immediately, you just draw a second one and Cascade them to death. Like, it's a 1-card combo. There's no interaction, right?
Yeah, I guess maybe it was the build.
You need to ferry them, right? You need to actually put down a hate card, but that hate card is not discard or a counter spell. It has to be like Aethersworn Canonist or something, because they can just keep casting more Cascade spells, right? They have nothing. Just cast a second one.
But people are going off turn 1.
Oh, actually, speaking of that, I played a Tibalt on turn 0 during a stream last week where we had Gemstone Caverns, 2 Simian Spirit Guides. We were on the draw and we are just like, oh wait, stop on our opponent's upkeep before they play their first land. Simian Spirit Guide, Gemstone, 3 mana, Tibalt. I'm like, okay, scoop.
Just the flex.
Oh, my bad. So you don't even get to turn 1. My bad. I'm sorry. Was that too slow? Okay.
Yes, that's a bit slow for our current Modern group. The real question is, like, do you think they're going to continue to allow this? Obviously, it's really early. Maybe things will adjust, although this does seem like a 1-card combo. We had similar synergies with split cards in the past, where you were able to Brain in the Jar, your Beck Call into play on 2 or whatever, or do some of those same tricks. Carry Zav's Expertise, cast the back half, really fuse it, get all the birds. And Wizards changed the rules specifically to stop that. I feel like this is essentially... I feel like it's essentially the same thing. They didn't change it back. No, still can't.
I'm saying, do you think like changing it back does anything?
Oh golly. I don't know if I want more decks that play like that.
Why not? At this point, give every deck a chance to just Brain in the Jar. Except Brain in the Jar is the weaker side of things, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's way too slow.
That's way too slow now. They will 100% change this. They will 100%. Like,
We'll change the rules on how it works?
Yeah, like you can't cascade into the 7 CMC part of your spell, right? If you want to cascade into the thing that actually fits the rules, which is Valky, right? So it's just so utterly broken, right? It's just like this card, the Cascade card is like a triple ritual plus tutor, right? As it stands. So like there's no way they can balance the game ever again, right? And they'll want to keep making these split cards. So I think this rule will 100% change. Like they changed the other rule, right? So you can't brain the jar thing. So why wouldn't they change this?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think unless all of a sudden it turns out this is bad and no one's doing it anymore, which I think is unlikely, I would not be at all surprised if we just got, it would probably be as easy as like adding a sentence to the rulebook, really, and you could stop the synergy. So I would be careful, especially on Magic Online, where Valky is absurdly expensive. Last I checked,
Valky like 90 ticks or something?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's down a tiny bit now. 84 ticks at the moment. So yeah, I would be a little bit worried about spending $300, $400 on a set of Valkyries, just because I agree with Richard. I would be very surprised if we didn't get a rule change in the semi-near future.
Wait, so Craig, do you like this? Is this our conclusion? Do you want Modern to be like this?
I see, for me, I view Modern as once Neo Brand was a thing, I was like already like, okay, whatever. They don't care. Like it's like, I'm not saying Neo Brand needs to get banned, but I think that deck is more consistent than I actually is led to be. And on top of that, like Modern, I don't know, like do I like Tibalt. I like Tibalt. I think the card is cool. I don't like this. Modern has been in a bad space for me for like a while now. So no, I guess to answer shortly, no, I don't like this. But I have many reasons, because I look at this deck list and my eye just twitches. My fist shakes in anger because I see Uro, I see Omnath, you know, and I see Cascade, a mechanic I already despise. Teferi's fine. Teferi,
I was gonna say, you're glossing over one card there, Krim. There's another card on that list.
Look, selective reading.
You can join them. You can go Teferi, Jace, Uro, and your deck would be just as good.
No, like Uro and like Jace is a meme. Like imagine trying to go, aha, if I replace Omnath with Jace, I lose. No, like this is just the problem with what the format's become, right? Like it's not even the form. Like when was the last time Modern was good for me? Holy cow, it's been a while, because I used to just complain that Tron was the
so
biggest
fair
issue.
now. Oh man, if someone would just turn 3 card me and make my day.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, look at this fool playing fair Magic in 2021. A turn 3 card, that's all you got?
Yeah. That's it? Imagine turn 3 carding and then losing because, actually, imagine dying before you get to turn 3 card, right?
I think the synergy is also dripping into Legacy already. The winning deck of the Legacy Challenge this week is just all the Spirit Guides, all the Force cards, like any free counter spell, and then Cascade spells, and Valky. That was the number one Legacy. Oh, also Oko. You can't forget. I mean, Oko's just so busted that it doesn't do anything with the theme of the deck, but it's Oko.
I would argue Tibalt's better than Oko. Right? Because it's 3 mana, crazy Planeswalker, but now you have like 12 copies of Tibalt in your deck, right? Or whatever, how many Cascade cards we have, right? It's the same thing, but better. And you get to actually draw like cards and good cards. You don't have to resort to making Elk, right? You can actually just draw your good cards.
Yeah, you can actually win the fair game by just plussing.
Yeah.
And then just getting your opponent's stuff. But is it better than Oko?
It 100% is. Imagine you can have 12 Okos or something in your deck, right?
But it feels like Oko's way less of a build around.
That's true, but if you can build around and have a crazy deck, like why not?
But then but then you become this deck that kind of like folds to, let's just say, a surgical extraction.
That's what all your counter spells are for.
Right. How could I forget all the free spells?
Like who needs mana? Like I'm waiting for like Manaless, but not Dredge. Just like straight up. Like you just play with no mana with just straight free spells. Okay, what do you guys think about Tibalt's Trickery in Modern? So Cascade is a little, sus, but what about Tibalt's Trickery?
See, Trickery, that one I think I might be okay with. I don't know if I care enough about that. Like So the format changes, right? Like, what do they have? Like a free ballista or something like that? And like the win cons, all the win cons are always bad anyways, no matter what they hit. So I don't think I care which format it's in. It's all the same.
Yeah, I think I at this point am also okay with it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased based on my experience playing the deck, and maybe it was like the build I was playing or just like the run that I was on, but I don't know. I haven't found the Trickery decks to be that prevalent or that scary, but maybe I should be more frightened of them. I mean, they have a whiff rate, which isn't there for the Cascade into Tibalt decks.
Right.
And they also, the build I played was like the 100% to get Emrakul build, where it's like 4 Cascade spells, a Trickery, 4 Emrakuls. And if they just like counter the Trickery, then you're out of Trickeries. And then you're like, I don't even know. You're trying to win with like the Valakut in your mana base after doing nothing for 7 turns in Modern, which is not very likely to actually work. So I'm much more okay with Trickery. Like, the play pattern's still annoying. If it ends up being the best deck in the format, then we can revisit. But at this point, I'm way more concerned about cascading into Tibalt itself than into Tibalt's Trickery.
Yeah. Well, okay. But one last thing then. How about what if this were a paper format and you sleeve up your F&M and you go and you and your opponents decide you wanted to go to the slot machines today and you just sit down across from each other? How would you feel about this deck then? Would that change how you feel? Can you imagine shuffling and mulliganing? Just like...
yeah, I know that is a good point. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just hoping Tibalt's Trickery decks are bad enough that they're not going to be a big deal. But if they are good, then I'll have a concern with it.
They can only be so good, though, right? As long as they have like a miss rate, they can only be so good. I'm just imagining a world where I sit across from you, and maybe I mulligan, maybe you're like into oblivion, and maybe you don't. And the best part is when you Trickery, it's like wait. Maybe my Trickery's better, right? At least in Standard. In Modern, there's an Emrakul and that's it, right? But like in other formats, like Historic and whatnot, like, yeah, sure. In Historic, I was able to hit Omniscience, right? Or Omniscience, as I like calling it. And then I went wild. But I don't know. Like, it's just funny. It's like, it's just an Ugin on 2. Keep playing. Yeah. Keep playing. Game on. Game on.
No biggie.
Game on.
Like, I don't think there's a miss rate. Like, I don't like. Are we not playing the same format here? Maybe not, because I'm playing Tarmogoyf, but like, so as long as they have Cascade, so if they didn't have Cascade, then Trickery itself is not that bad, right? But with the Cascade, right, it's a 1-card combo where they Cascade into, or they Trickery, and then they get the Cascade, or they Cascade and Trickery, and then they just get the Emrakul and they win. And there's like nothing.
If we're talking the Trickery or the Cascade version, because the Cascade version,
so not Cascade into Tibalt, so not Cascade into Tibalt, but Cascade with the Trickery.
But what if you just like thought seize them on turn 1 and take their Cascade spell,
and then they draw
like
another one and
force
they Cascade you, right? Again.
Yeah, but if you're mulliganing into like Oblivion to find
they don't need
it,
to.
like,
they have like 12 cards that they like. Just imagine all the 2 or 3 card combos that people need to assemble in Modern, and how consistent that is versus this actual literal 1-card combo.
I mean, yes, that is true. Like, you have to. It's not like you don't have to work for it at all. So like, but I think we're all in agreement though that version of it is kind of already busted, right? Like, it's pretty
like if they only fix the Cascade rule, I don't like this deck is still a thing, the Emrakul deck, which I don't like.
That's
right. Like I play 8 main deck 1 mana discards, right? And I have to play 4. That's not winnable. I would consider myself a dog in that matchup, right? Because you get the first one and then you can't kill them in like 2 turns because you're playing Tarmogoyf, right? What you really need to do is like thought seize them and then turn 2 combo yourself, right? Because they will just draw another one and then they win, right?
I mean, but they could always Trickery into their Simian Spirit Guide, Richard. You gotta pray really hard that's that's what they hit.
Yeah.
I will say, like, in Modern, it is much more consistent than Standard. Like, if you look at the modern builds that have a bunch of payoffs. So you're playing a bunch of Eldrazi, a bunch of Omnisciences and so forth. Like, your odds of hitting something good is pretty high. You have like 2 Trickeries and 4 Simian Spirit Guides that are whiffs, but then like 20 some hits or something. So I think that in Standard, the fizzle rate's high enough that it's less of a concern. But in Modern, if you find your Cascade spell, you are a pretty decent percent, like 80+% to end up with something game winning theoretically.
It's game winning on this. It's not like Living End where you have a turn. You're like, okay, I just Wrath or something, right? Like I could do something here. The Emrakul comes, they take the turn immediately, you're dead. The only way you win is you have 7 permanents, they're at 1 life. So when they attack you, you like somehow survive and like kill them back, right? But other than that, like it's over. So it's an instant win, like 1 card combo.
Oh, but okay, I gotta ask you guys a question about this before we hit other topics. Do you think this was intentional? Like, so many cards these days say your opponent controls. If you look at various removal spells and stuff, does the fact that Tibalt's Trickery does not say a spell your opponent controls suggest that Wizards wanted people to be using it on their own spells as a combo piece, or do you think it was just an oversight?
I think they did. I mean, they wanted you. I think they tried to play around it becoming a combo piece by causing the mill and stuff like that. But like at the same time, like they had to have known, right?
They clearly don't test at all, right? Because they were thinking about it and like, okay, we'll get them to mill 1, 2, or 3 cards so they can't like tutor something to the top. But clearly no one just tried, well, what if I put nothing in my deck but an Emrakul?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if I did this? Right? Like they didn't test it, right?
It's so obvious that I think it's intentional. It has to be.
Let me bring you Exhibit A, Saheeli Copycat.
Okay, all right.
It's so obvious that even Redditors could find it the minute the spoiler was released.
Okay. Good counter argument, I guess. So yeah, okay. So are you thinking then they didn't know? They really didn't know because this is just a 2-mana polymorph, right?
I mean, I kind of lean towards what Richard is saying, I think, where, like, I guess in between the two of you. Like, I think that they intended to have you counter your own spells because of the mill thing. I think that's a pretty clear sign that they at least thought it through enough that, like, okay, people probably use this on their own stuff, or else the mill would be unnecessary. At the same time, I'm not convinced they were like, what happens if you put this in a Modern deck with a bunch of Cascade spells? Like, did they get to that point in testing? I'm not convinced that they actually got there, especially when they're pretty upfront about not testing for non-standard formats for the most part, or not doing much testing for non-standard formats. So I think that they intended for people to do this, but I'm not sure they tested and saw how good it could actually be.
I mean, yeah, I definitely don't believe like they in-depth tested it, right? Like a billion games, but I can't help but feel like, yeah, that they had to have known to some extent that this was going to happen.
The Trickery one's a lot harder to fix, too. Like, I feel like the Cascade into Tibalt, you can just change the rule like you did with split cards. Cascade into Trickery, if that's a problem, like, what do you do? I guess it's ban Trickery because there's a million Cascade spells, so I don't think you ban all the Cascade spells. Like, I don't think you can do that. So what's the other option other than a banning if it did get to the point where that was, like, problematic?
Yeah, I'm going to put Cascade up there with Dredge and Infect, I think. It deserves it at this point, especially with all the rules loops we have. Like, I just don't want to see Cascade anymore. Like, stop cheating mana, right? Like, stop casting things for free, even with a random clause. Because you know what? Magic players are pretty smart to figure out a way to get around the randomness of it. And you're going to have, like, a card you intended to be cast at 15 mana, cast for 2. On your opponent's upkeep on the first turn of the game, right? So, like, I don't know, right? Like, this, just stop casting, like, making these free cards.
Although I will admit, the troll in me, I guess, does enjoy this deck because it's like, you know, like, everyone's like, haha, I outplayed that person. And I just go, haha, Crim go burn. And then I do enjoy that.
All right, we should probably move on and hit up a couple of other topics quick before we get to fish mail. And this is one where, I don't know, maybe this is something we mostly hold over for a future week when we can dedicate more time to it. But the reserve list has been going absolutely crazy. Like, easiest example of this, a price of a complete revised set doubled since January 1st. Like, it costs twice as much to get a complete revised set as it did then. And that is more or less true about pretty much all the old reserve list sets. Not quite a full doubling, but like Arabian Nights, those cards, it is a huge, massive increase. And that's kind of brought the topic of reserve list and proxies back up. You have a lot of people saying this isn't going to stop. Like, if anything, this is just going to keep going. What do you guys think of all this this crazy reserve list action? We've seen these buyouts for a long time, but this is definitely the most extreme doubled. It's ever been. Yeah, like it has never been to this extent before.
So, like, if you're asking me as somebody who owns part of this, I'm getting closer and closer. I think you tweeted out the other day, and then I saw that, and it's just like, every day I really do get closer to just wanting to get rid of all my duels. Like, I don't need them. What am I going to do with them? Like, I just play them because, I like blue and black. I want to own every blue and black land. Okay, so what? But do I really need this Underground Sea? Definitely not. It's not needed for Magic. However, holy cow, why? Like, what? They're not gonna, like, can they do anything about this? I mean, they can, but will they? No. So, I don't know. It feels bad, right? Like, it feels bad. Like, some of this stuff, like Gaia's Cradle, all of that. Like, I don't know, what is Gilded Drake at now? I haven't even looked at that. Like,
yeah, good question. I will look it up real quick.
It's at $450.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. And I
complained, by the way, when I bought this at GP San Jose for $50.
Wow. Yeah.
I complained about it. This is just ridiculous. What is this? I mean, if you're an investor and whatnot, and you're like, oh wow, like stocks and whatnot, like that, and you want to like turn Magic into like something like that, then I guess congrats to you if you bought a ton of these, but I don't know.
I think it's also important to mention that it's not just the good cards either. Like, it is, if it's on the reserve list, like, there's been a lot of cards that I honestly didn't even realize were Magic cards. I'm like, oh my God, that like quadrupled in price, or it's up 1,000% in price this week. So it's really just, if it's on the reserve list, it's probably getting bought out. We saw Skeleton Ship go up to $20 from like bulk rare. Like, no matter how bad or unplayable it is, if it's on the reserve list, it's going crazy. I guess my question is, like, what do players do? Like, what happens if you need one of these cards? You're trying to build a commander deck and you want a Wheel of Fortune, or you need a Gaia's Cradle, or some of the cards on the reserve list. Like, I feel like dual lands are actually some of the least impactful for commander, because honestly, like, the difference between Volcanic Island and Steam Vents in a commander deck is like pretty minimal for the most part. But there's other cards that don't just have a easy replacement, like Wheel of Misfortune. It's kind of like Wheel of Fortune, except I always die when I cast it, so there is a drawback
Seth,
to some of the...
that's only your experience, because you bet like your entire health pool to do that. I've had a blast playing that card, so you leave my son out of this.
But are we just to the point where people should proxy for their commander decks? Like, do we as a community, is that where we're at now? Like, Wizards can't or won't change the reserve list. Finance types are going to keep buying out the reserve list, and the prices are going to keep going up. If you need one of those cards, like, is that the advice to give someone putting together a commander deck that just wants to play with Gaia's Cradle or wants to play with Wheel of Fortune?
Just don't put them in your deck.
I mean, some of these cards, I think, like, should you be playing them anyways? Right? like as in, like, a Gaia's Cradle, is that ever a card that you like? I mean, outside of Vince, do you think that's a card that like everyone should be playing anyways? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, if you want to play it, go ahead and just proxy it, like, whatever, as long as it's not, once again, proxies as in not the like ones that are trying to pass as real cards. That's a problem.
Just Sharpie it up, or there's tons of people who sell legal proxies that they make that don't have any Magic IP on them and have like cool custom art that someone did. Like, as long as it doesn't have official Magic stuff on it, or the card name or whatever, like, that is completely legal. So there are other options if you want to fill in like that. I don't know. Do you think that just not playing the cards is a good option, Richard?
Like, I think so. That's the thing. Like, there's some entitlement, there's some expectation as Magic players we have that we should have access to every card and every product is for us. So when things like this product is not for you happens, you feel bad, right? But just like, assume you're able to own Action Comics #1, right? You just know like that's just out of reach. Like I think we have to accept that, hey, reserve list cards are out of reach, right? They are something that will never decrease in price. They will just continue to increase in price. And in a couple of years, they'll be like $1 billion, like just like a Black Lotus is out of reach for basically all of us. And you just don't play with the cards and move on, right? Because, you know, if I have a nice blinged out deck, right? I bought some nice Secret Lair, some nice promos. Do I want Sharpied cards in my deck? Right? Isn't that a little awkward? We are playing a collector's game. Our promos are a big thing and expression is a big thing.
My immersion.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want Sharpied Island saying Wheel of Fortune in my deck, right? So I think you just got to accept that, hey, can't afford this card. You know, Wizards not doing anything about it, so we just don't play these cards, right? Like
at the same time though, like I can pick up a $10 version of Action Comics #1. Like if I just want to read the first Superman or whatever. Like they've reprinted it a ton of times. There's a million different editions. They're constantly putting out new ones. So like, yeah, not everyone needs to own the original Action Comics #1, but should everyone be able to read Action Comics #1 if they want to? Yeah, like there's just no reason for the reserve list to exist. There's no reason anyone should have to be like, okay, I can't play Wheel of Fortune. Like I will just cross it off my list.
Like I don't think any actual Magic players like, yes, reserve list is good, right? Well, like, yeah, they should reprint all these cards into Oblivion. And I'm pretty sure 99.9% of Magic players, even if you're holding these reserve list cards, would agree, right? Like, yeah, I'd like to have dual lands in my deck, right? But they're not doing it. So what is the alternative? Are we just going to sit down and all play with proxy decks now, right? Is that where we're going?
Isn't part of the fun of Commander that you do get to play these old nostalgic cards? Like, I think isn't part of the joy, like, I got this goofy skeleton ship. And, like, isn't that part of what makes Commander great? Like, I don't know. I feel like you are losing something if you just cross the reserve list off of your list of playable cards. So, I think there is a cost there. I guess I'm pretty accepting.
But are you really enjoying it if you're playing with proxied pirate ship? Like, is that the same nostalgic kick? Like, this was my childhood proxy. Like, yes.
Sometimes you gotta put a -1/-1 counter on something, Richard. Don't underestimate the -1/-1 counter.
Like, I agree with everything you're saying, which is why skeleton ships should be cheap. But like, I have to proxy my childhood memories. I'm like, is it really accomplishing what's going on here? This was the same deck I played, but as an adult, I can no longer afford what I could afford as a child. So I will have to proxy it, right? Like,
Oh, that is a good point. That is fair. I mean, I would be okay with proxies in limited instances. I don't think that everyone's decks are a bunch of index cards with words written on them would be all that fun of a way to play a game of Commander. But if someone needs a Gaia's Cradle or a Wheel of Fortune and they proxy it, that's not going to offend me in the least, honestly.
See, like it comes down to just some of the cards. I don't know. I mean, probably don't need a Gaia's Cradle anyways. Plus, what is it? You have Rights of Tillamook, right? That's the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically the same. At least it doesn't kill you like Wheel of Misfortune, so...
Once again, Seth, you had a very weird experience with Wheel of Misfortune.
You gotta draw those cards, Grim. You can't leave anything to chance. Yeah. It's your life.
Yeah.
1 minus your life total. That's the bid every time.
So do you think a world where we all proxy, like people will be fine with that? Like Wizards won't be fine with it, obviously, but do you think players would be?
I think for casual play in general, yes. In my opinion on proxying is, I'm not arguing that we should do this for like modern, like, oh, my fetch lands are too expensive, I'm going to proxy them, or for tournament play. But as far as like playing Commander on the kitchen table or with your play group, I do think that's kind of where we're heading.
I think it's okay to proxy if it's, once again, like, you go out of your way, you find an artwork, I don't know, of Squidward or SpongeBob, and you know what I mean, or something like that, and you attach it, and you whatever, right? Like, you do that, sure. Like, I think it's fine for Commander. But I do worry about what point is it, like, how we think about it. Like, we have fakes of like $2 cards, right? And I'm wondering, like, when is it that people are just like, I just don't want to spend money at all, and my entire deck is just all fake?
Yeah, I mean, Crib, we play at the same local game store. I don't know how much Legacy you play, but we sit down sometimes and we're like, your cards look highly suspect, but I don't care. I just want to hit you with the Stoneforge, right? It already happened, and this was like years ago when prices were more reasonable. But there's some aspect of Magic which is pay to win, and I feel if you're sitting there playing Guild Gates, and then your opponent sits down, cracks fetch land into proxy dual land, like there's some feel bad moments there, and that you won't be happy, and maybe you're not like unhappy enough to say something, but you're like, you know, I worked hard to put together my deck. Why does this person just like start proxying like half the cards because they're reserve list? I feel there'll be like some feel bad there. No?
I mean, yeah, there would be some feel bad, but I think if it's like universally like, you know, agreed upon or something like that, then maybe this person now doesn't have to sit there with a Tranquil Cove as opposed to a Tundra, right?
Yeah, just grab a Sharpie and cross off Tranquil Cove and
Yeah.
write Tundra real quick, and you're good to go.
You don't gain the life, and
Untap
that
it.
might lose you the game, but like, you know, like,
You die at one life. You're like, come on.
it should have been
only
a
this
Tranquil
was-
Cove.
If only this Tundra was a gain land.
Like, I don't know. I mean, if it's universally agreed upon, right, then there won't be somebody sitting there with a Tranquil Cove, though, right? Like, so I think that situation is a little different.
I think Wizards just abolished the reserve list. Would they actually get sued?
I agree. I
don't
fully
think they would
agree.
actually get sued. And if they get sued, they can settle and then pay that settlement with all the cash they're making from reprinting these cards.
Yes.
Secret Lair dual lands,
Yes.
here. We'll take 2% of it and pay off this lawsuit. Okay? And then we'll just rake in the money here, right? Like, and then imagine, like, not only do you have dual lands, but then you're going to have Secret Lair dual lands, and you're going to have extended art dual lands, and blah, blah, blah. Like, just the possibilities
I've been wanting
are
the Moto
endless,
arts.
right? So
Oh, they'd make so much
They
money.
should just do
Like,
it.
They would make so much
they should
money.
just do it
so.
and then compensate the people that sue them with some portion of the proceeds, and then move on to, you know, making Magic cards like the way they intended, right?
And
Yeah.
the originals are going to still maintain value because they don't turn into Pringles if they're foil. So I don't think you're going to lose too much if you own original versions. All right, we should. Oh boy, we're going super long. I want to mention quickly: new Secret Lair partially announced a Black History Month themed Secret Lair, and so far we've seen 2 cards. One is Shall I Voice of Plenty, another is Ponder. We're supposed to be getting the rest. There's 5 more cards that are going to be coming over the next couple of weeks. They're going to spoil the rest of them. What do you guys think of our first look of the new Secret Lair drop?
Oh my god, I love the coloring and all of that on the Ponder. It's beautiful. And the artwork on that and Shalai, it looks so so sweet. But the coloring on Ponder specifically, like it's so well drawn, like or done.
I
The art
really
is just
like the
amazing.
Ponder, and especially the callback to the 3 moons or whatever. Like, oh, it's really good.
And the flavor text is even great.
I haven't actually read the flavor text. Will the future be brighter?
Yeah.
Asked the girl. Riel smiled. I will teach you how to make it so. Ah, yes, the combo win off the top of the library. Yes. I will teach you. Just fetch away the 2 other cards you don't want.
Just remember, Richard. I guess you don't need a Ponder to just like to look for the combo.
You don't need to plot 2 card combos. That's so 2019, Krim. We're 2021 now, okay? Like 1 card combos where we're at. $50 for foil, $40 non-foil. Coming out February 22nd to March 31st. Yeah.
And I
need this for my commander deck. The Ponder.
Oh, the Ponder is really good. I think that's the best Ponder art. I love the Ponder art. Shalai, I'm kind of man, like whatever, but the Ponder is great, and I think that at least part of the money is going to charity. I don't actually see that listed on this page. There's like 3 different articles that they posted already about the Secret Lair drop. So, but I'm pretty sure one of them said that part of it is going
Goes
to charity.
to Black
so.
Girls Code, which is pretty sweet. Everyone should know how to code.
All right. Well, we're going a little long. Richard, can we sneak in a couple of fish mail at the end of the cast today?
All right. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your question on air. So first off, not a specific question, but so last week I talked about how Arena doesn't play on my phone, and we asked people on Twitter and YouTube and the website and everything. The consensus is it works fine, that it's just my potato phone. Outside of some like random like weird game bugs, but in terms of performance, it's actually pretty smooth. So if you have
Good.
Or if you're planning on getting a new Android phone or something, it should be okay. My case was unique. And this gives me hope for iPhone as well, because that should run even better. So yeah, just to close the loop on that. Prof. Cataret. Standard should be called Eldraine Constructed at this moment. What do you think Standard would look like if Eldraine was erased?
Amazing.
Oh, it'd be a utopia.
Yeah.
Would it?
I mean, probably something
We would
else would be
complain about
broken,
something
but
else,
let
right?
me have my dreams, Richard. Let me have my dreams.
Yeah. Richard, hold on. On top of that, like complaining about what do we complain about next? Because I feel like
Rogues.
next in line
It would be rogues.
rogues. I mean,
People
okay,
already complain about rogues, and it's not even an Eldraine deck.
yeah, I don't even think rogues is that bad, but I am biased.
And I mean, I guess rogues would get worse because they'd lose Drown in the Lock in the draw 4, which is pretty busted. So maybe it would
they
take
also
care
lose
of-
Mystical Dispute on top of that. Like,
I actually like Eldraine is so important to almost every deck in the meta that I have no idea what Standard would look like. Like if they banned Eldraine, it would be the Wild West. Like just read the top tier decks of the format. Almost every single one is heavily reliant on Eldraine cards. So all bets would be off if Eldraine suddenly
Well, I
disappeared.
mean, we just gotta
yeah,
wait.
you wouldn't have your removal and interaction also be a win condition. So you actually have to decide on deck building, like how much of each you
You
can
have to make decisions in game. What is this, Krim?
I'm sorry, I'll never bring up something so edgy, so daring.
We'll find out in what rotation happens in September, right? So that's 7 months.
Oh, it's so far.
That's 7 months. We'll
Yeah,
learn
that's
what Eldraine-less constructed looks like. But remember when Eldraine was a savior. So maybe in September it'll
To
just
what?
be like Strixhaven constructed or something. And
Wait. When was Eldraine a savior?
didn't we all like Eldraine and we're like, wow, look at these cool cards and look at these cool mechanics and I think it's too parasitic. I don't know if they're gonna be able to play as one block. And yeah, remember this time?
I remember saying that a lot of things are going to get banned from this set or it's too powerful.
Remember the awesome
I mean,
gingerbread
maybe-
person trailer? We're like, yeah, Eldraine, yeah.
That was a good trailer. That's still, I think, their best trailer. Maybe Eldraine is all that's keeping Tibalt's Trickery in check, and if it goes away, then it's just going to be one deck Tibalt Trickery meta.
I think there would have to be a lot removed for it to be Trickery meta. Like actually
cards
just the
until
other
tomorrow.
sets.
Yeah.
All right.
See, like I think though, like right now, Eldraine. That's they still have time. Just real quick, I still think they have time. Before Strixhaven releases, they do an emergency rotation. With the release of with Strixhaven, we're rotating early. They still have time to salvage this.
Wait,
I'd be down.
wait. When does Strixhaven release?
April?
So you're just getting a rotation a couple of months early?
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
like
I'll take it.
6-ish.
I mean,
Yeah.
the last time we speculated this, they did this, right? That was when like Cat got banned and all those cards. They kind of did an early rotation.
You mean an Eldraine card?
No. before this rotation, we were complaining that they should just rotate all of Standard, and they kind of did. So maybe if we complain
Good,
some more on
okay.
the podcast, they'll get rid of Eldraine.
Wink, wink. Hey, that would be wild if that happened, right?
All right.
Nudge, nudge, please.
B-Dogs44. In the spirit of the brutal officiating in the Super Bowl, what is the worst/harshest judge call you've ever seen or been a part of?
Oh jeez.
Oh.
I mean, I'll
I
let you
got
guys
one.
handle this because I play on Moto, so I don't have to deal with that.
I was at a regionals event. I had a Sylvos and a Visara in my deck box of my Jeskai control deck in Standard. And I got a game loss for having additional cards in my deck box.
Rookie mistake, Krim. In case you don't know that, you're not allowed to have cards that are not in your deck box because they assume it's part of your deck. And then you get a game loss.
Sure, if it were that format, right? But see, I'm the kind of person where I just take cards, people give them to me, right? And then like when they give them to me, I just put them in my deck box, right? Immediately. And the thing here is that would make sense if it were like, let's just say, I don't know, at that time, I think it was like original Theros, Steam Augury or something like that, right? But it was not that. It's Sylvos and Visara the Dreadful. The legendaries from Onslaught that aren't, it's perfectly the two colors that aren't in Jeskai. Like what? Why?
Yeah.
Why would I get a game loss for that?
I mean, I think my harshest ones are similar to those where you see people lose because they didn't know something. Like, for example, the last match of F&M, a lot of people like to split, but if you don't ask for it in the right method, it's illegal, and then you get disqualified. And
yeah, you
have to do this weird dance, and you can't say certain words, and you
3 winks means draw.
Yeah, you can even call a judge over to listen them to do your dance, and if you don't do it right, you get a game lost. And I think it's like one of the stupidest aspects of Magic I've like ever seen.
I've seen so many people because like I think as an L, like, well, I lapsed by now, but back when L1, you have to do it. I think it's even known in the judge community, like it sucks that you have to do it because you could tell some people just don't know, right? But it's just like, hey, we gotta DQ you.
Yeah.
We gotta DQ you. It's just like, by the rules, we have to DQ you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of awkward because you just kind of like, they're obviously upset because like they're like, what'd I do? I didn't even cheat anything. I just want to get out of here. My ride's here. You know what I mean? Like, I've done it. I've had to DQ somebody. So,
all right. Last question. M. Menden CA84 with Tibalt / Valky dominating several formats. I saw a few people say he was at GOAT level. Do you think he would still get this attention if he couldn't be cheated into play with Cascade?
Richard?
No. I mean, it would still be a fine standard card, I think, even if it was played fairly. I think it would be very, very fringe playable outside of standard, though, and would definitely not be in the conversation for best Planeswalker of all time.
Yeah, one time I almost made it to 6 mana to cast Tibalt. I almost. do you think he's GOAT with the Cascade?
I mean, yeah.
Like Jace versus Tibalt, or Oko versus Tibalt.
Yeah, like, yes, but I think that's because of the Cascade, not because of Tibalt. Like, if it was any other Planeswalker, but you could put it into play on like turn 1, 2, 3, like, it would, like, imagine if it was Karn, but you could just like Cascade into it. That's probably better. Or Ugin would be better. Like So I think the power is Cascade. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, on turn 3, choose a Planeswalker you'd rather have: Karn, Jace, Oko, or Tibalt.
I think I would have to go with Karn, right? I mean, Karn deals with the others.
I would probably go with Karn as well because it does deal with the others and anything else.
Yeah. But from value point, I think I would have to go with Tibalt.
I mean, Tibalt is a sweet card.
Yeah.
I like Tibalt. It's just the cheating into play that might be a problem.
I think Tibalt over Oko and Jace, but you're right, Karn does do things, but in the head-to-head, you would definitely take the Karn, but if you're just like in a vacuum, maybe take the Tibalt anyway. It's like 2 cards, plus it can kill something. I guess it depends on the order of things. If you get... Wait, Tibalt can exile a Planeswalker, right? Or no? What?
No.
Oh,
artifact creature.
Okay.
But essentially, no matter what, Tibalt will draw you 2 cards, right? Because Tibalt's minus can be removal, and then you can play whatever you exile.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't even realize
you
could do that.
It is still very strong.
Yeah, I didn't even realize you. Wow, I've like never seen that happen ever.
Is that just because you scoop as soon
You
as
presume I have
goes on
creatures
the
on the board.
stack.
I'm in good shape for them to exile, but no. Usually I have nothing because it's like turn 2 already, and I spent my turn thought seizing them, so they just cascade into whatever they want.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Richard. If we played, I would not minus. If I minus, I would not use your Tarmogoyf or your Strangleroot guys.
Oh, it's a clean answer to Strangleroot guys. You know, you're gonna be so happy for the Tibalt. You're like, wow, a clean answer to Strangleroot guys. How do you contain that power?
Unbeatable. Not even Jace or Teferi could do that.
I was very worried about that 2-1, but Tibalt comes through.
Finally.
That's it. I'm recording a gameplay series right now where we 5-0 a modern league with Strangleroot guys. It might just take me 20 leagues, but I'll get it done. Okay?
Yes. Oh, will Richard achieve this goal before the next podcast? Tune in next week to find out. I'm going to go with no.
I don't think 20 leagues gets you there. If I'm being honest with you.
You got to remember, I don't have to play full leagues. As soon as I lose the first game, I can scoop. So I could probably get in 50 leagues to get this done. We will pump Strangleroot guys.
You know what you should do, Richard? You should play the Cascade deck, but not play Tibalt, and have your 2-drop be Strangleroot Geist, and see how many people just get seen when it goes on the stack. That might be how you could get the 5-0 with Strangleroot Geist.
Just the pure confusion.
The irony is I do play Bloodbraid Elf, and I hope to cascade it to Tibalt, but sometimes I cascade it to Strangleroot Geist. And I'm like, well, I guess that's 2 more power. I guess that's not bad. All right. Enough of us Strangleroot, guys. If you have questions, you can send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag EnergyFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And on that note, that brings us to the end of episode 315 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard, Crib, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about Richard's quest to win with Strangleroot Geist in Modern and whatever else goes down in the world of Magic. So, until then, have a great week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.